Good evening, India, and good morning, USA. Hello, I'm Dr. Vijala Kennedy, Principal of Kumaraguru College of Liberal Arts and Science. I very cordially welcome the panelists, the Zoom participants, the YouTube viewers, our media partner, Times of India, and our marketing partner, DigiGrad, part of Social Beat. And I really hope that all of you are safe and healthy in these uncertain times. Kumaraguru College of Liberal Arts and Science welcomes you to the conversation 3 on the topic Future of International Education in the webinar series on the New World Order. We have had two conversations earlier, and we have had panelists from Australia. We have had panelists from Singapore. So now we are diving across the globe to US. So we are very happy that our panelists could join us. So to set the context, maybe 4-5 months even back, all our universities had a primary agenda of go global and internationalization of education. And if you look at the statistics, just in 2018, from India, there were around 2,77,000 plus outbound students. And looking again at the scenario, the slice of the pie across the countries, the receiving countries have been shifting, and they're the players of USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. There have been huge shifts even in the past years, but the hockey stick of growth of mobility of students never dipped. So in this context, in this evolving context, in this growth context, something has entered into this scenario. So that is why Kumaraguru College of Liberal Arts and Science wanted or planned this webinar for us to understand what is the way forward in this. And we had two reasons why we had this specific topic. Kumaraguru College of Liberal Arts and Science, when we started 2 years back, we had a very clear vision 2030. And one of the strategic imperatives of this 2030 vision was internationalization. And we were marching towards what we wanted to achieve. And in the larger context, Kumaraguru Institutions, we have engineering college, we have a business school, of course, we have our liberal arts and science. We have 14 very active MOUs. And we were very happy that Dr. Raju Balakrishnan visited us a few months back and from University of Michigan, Dearborn, and to have again discussions on how do we take this forward. So this is how the institution, Kumaraguru Institution, is active. Last year, around 70 of our students went for different short-term courses across the globe, from Australia to Germany to Czechoslovakia to USA to Egypt. And with this kind of aspiration from the Kumaraguru institutions, and I'm sure that this is across different institutions in India and globally, with this changing context, how do we take this internationalization forward? So we had this question, and we thought it would be nice to have a discussion on this so that the larger audience also benefit. And I'm sure that reflection will take place in different quarters. So it is leading us to questions of, is internationalization only mobility of students, or is it beyond? Can we look at internationalization from leadership perspective or administrative perspective? Can we look at internationalization from curriculum perspective or design and delivery in research, services, etc.? And because many times we limit internationalization only to the student mobility or faculty mobility. So will there be new models of internationalization emerging? Will new models emerge from the existing partnerships across the globe? And I think very interesting question for me would be, can India actually become an educational hub for the neighborhood countries? So with these broad questions in mind, I'm sure the panelists who are here with us will throw a lot of light on some of these aspects. And we are very fortunate to have an excellent panel to discuss on this broad scope of things. And I welcome Dr. Raju Balakrishnan, who is our speaker today. Good morning, sir, across the globe. Thank you for joining us in the morning from there. And to introduce Dr. Raju Balakrishnan, he's a professor of management and Dean of College of Business, University of Michigan, Dearborn. Prior to this, he has served in Clemson University, Tulane University, University of Georgia in various positions. And under his leadership, College of Business has grown, and very happy to say that he has spearheaded partnerships in China, India, Taiwan, Jordan, and in Kumaraguru Institutions. He has introduced several multidisciplinary courses, and his academic background is his PhD in management from Purdue University, MS in Beyond University of Madras. So very happy to have you here on board here with us for the conversation. And his teaching interests are on spreadsheet modeling, statistics, operations management, and has authored a book on decision models. And he has several awards to his credits. So we welcome you, Dr. Balakrishnan, for this conversation as our speaker. I'm also very happy to introduce Ravi Kandasamy, who is moderating the session, who is the Director of Technology Services of KCT. And he has studied and worked in US for 16 years. He has his MS in computer science from Louisiana State University and MBA from Ross Business School, University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. So you see that now the connect between the moderator and the speaker, the common thread that lies between them. So Ravi has held in the past several leadership roles in Fortune 500 companies in different sectors like IT, consulting, tax accounting, portfolio management, etc. And he specializes in project management, and he's a certified project management specialist. So I welcome both Dr. Balakrishnan and Ravi Kandasamy for the session. And I welcome all the participants who have joined us. We have around 150 participants in the Zoom session, and we have YouTube viewers also. So we will hand it over to the moderator now. So the moderator and the speaker will have a conversation for around 40 minutes, and post which we'll have a Q&A session. We request all of you to post the questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box, so that it becomes easier for the panelists. And sit back, receive the thoughts, reflect on them, and respond, because the future is there for us, very challenging, but I think it opens up lots of avenues. So with that thought, let me hand it over to Ravi Kandasamy for the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vijla. It's a pleasure hosting or moderating this session. I'm so happy to have Dr. Raju Balakrishnan with us and who can talk in as an expert on the future of international education, having studied and worked in some of the premier universities across the world. He has the master expertise in terms of how to respond and what is going on with the current situation. this pandemic and the subsequent lockdown efforts have brought about a seismic change in the way we work, and higher education sector is one of the most severely affected sectors. So from the university side, if you look at it, we have rising visa restrictions across all countries, as well as travel restrictions in terms of international travel. We also have growing xenophobia across universities and across countries towards certain international students. You also have university funding getting cut, and international student revenue being one of the major revenue earners for many universities. That's also getting cut. So on the university side, many issues, and on the student side, parents worrying about the safety of their wards, uncertainty of the university calendar or the schedule of the university. How is it going to work? When are my classes going to be scheduled, etc. And also combined with that, looking at the lack of funding opportunities for students for their scholarships, and uncertainty about their career opportunities after their studies in either the host country or back in India or any other country from where they came from. So with all of this becoming a reality, this has become a quite a big challenge for both the universities and students to plan their international education. So I'm looking forward to hearing Dr. Raju Balakrishnan's views on how should university and college administrators, as well as parents and students, should look at the short term of planning their educational career, as well as from the university side managing the international student affairs, and also the long term strategic implications that this pandemic has forced on all of the stakeholders, and how do we respond to those challenges. Dr. Raju Balakrishnan, welcome. Happy to have you. I have a set of questions that I had worked with the team here and prepared. So we will start with those questions, but I also encourage the session participants to also post their questions in the Q&A, so that we can make this highly interactive and get the session tailored for the specific questions that the session participants wish to get answers for. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks very much for inviting me to be on this panel, Ravi. And then thank you, Dr. Vigila, for the warm introduction. First, I want to echo at the very beginning what Dr. Vigila said. I hope everybody is doing well and staying healthy. This is clearly an unprecedented time for us. And let me begin with an apology. If you hear some loud noise in the background, my lawn mowing guy has picked this time of all times to come and mow my lawn. So I'm hearing that noise periodically. So if there is an interruption, it'll be temporary. But go ahead with your questions, and then I'll kind of talk more about my views on that.
So at a broad level, what is your views on how internationalization will emerge in academia, both in India and in other countries? What is your view?
That's a broad question. And let me first mention a couple of caveats. First, whatever I'm saying today are my views of what I think are going to happen. These are in no way representative of the University of Michigan, because again, I guess the easiest way to say this is everybody is trying to figure out what is going to happen. I don't think there is one individual in the planet today who knows exactly what is going to happen, not just with regards to the pandemic, but also what it means for international education or higher education in general. So anybody who speaks with a great deal of authority on this matter is guessing as much as you and I are. Okay, so as Dr. Kennedy and I were talking earlier, my days are now consumed with all sorts of scenario planning, because we don't know what is going to happen with regards to, and you took a lot of my talking points with regards to funding, with regards to the visa situation, with regards to the travel situation, and so on. And then we also have to look at it from two perspectives. There is the short-term implication, as in what are we going to do the rest of this year? What is going to happen in 2021 and maybe the next couple of years? And then there is the medium and long-term implications. What is the world going to look like in 5 years? Or what is international education going to look like in 5 years? So these are all evolving and emerging topics. And I mean, it is safe to say that we are operating in a completely new environment now. I mean, in just a matter of 8 weeks, things have been turned topsy-turvy, and things that we took for granted, as in the ability to have large sets of students come to campus, interact in a classroom, interact in a lab, interact with each other, because I strongly believe, for example, that a significant part of education is not what you learn in the classroom, but also the interactions that you have outside the classroom. And those things that we took for granted have been completely disrupted, to the point that now we are trying to figure out how to operate in this new environment. As you are well aware, in the US, in the month of March, there was this abrupt shift from literally within a matter of 24 hours from face-to-face to online. And I suspect that from what I understand, that was exactly the same in KCT and every other place.
That's right.
We have already, that was a learning experience, because while we had some expertise in online education, a lot of our professors had to learn overnight how to adjust to the new normal. A lot of students who had joined us with the expectation that there was going to be this face-to-face interaction now found themselves in a remote environment. So that was now we are doing the summer sessions completely online. We announced that early, and the summer sessions are surprisingly resulting in good enrollments. A lot of students have, I guess, now adjusted to the new normal. But the big question mark all of us face, and I was asking Dr. Vijala this question earlier, what is your plan for the fall semester, which normally here will start in August or September? And that is where I think there are two aspects to that: the domestic students, and then equally important, the international students. It is no secret that graduate education in the US in particular, but also in countries like Canada, UK, and so on, are highly dependent on international students. Okay. Graduate education in US especially has always had a very good reputation. And so we have this huge influx of international students. In some universities, if you look at the PhD programs, they are about 80–85% dominated by international students, primarily from places like India, China, Taiwan, and all over the world. Even at the master's level, we are seeing an increased number of international students. So now in this new normal, the question becomes what happens? And I can tell you the worst case scenario that we are planning for is assuming 0 international new students coming this fall, because of some of the reasons you just mentioned, Ravi. Will the students be allowed to travel? Okay, even if they are allowed to travel, are they willing to travel, right? Yeah. What is the visa situation? My understanding is nothing is being processed right now anywhere in the world, right? And then I guess you could also throw the parents into the mix, saying even if the student wants to go, are the parents willing to let them go, to a country where they don't know what is going to happen? So we are having to adjust to this new environment. And so what we are looking for are different ways to allow international students to continue their pursuit of a graduate education, say in a US university, and I suspect universities across the world are doing the same thing, without disruption. And one way we are planning to do this is to say that if a student wants to join one of the graduate programs here, but cannot physically come here this fall for various reasons, even if things have opened up and they don't want to come, will it be possible for them to start the program online and then transition to a face-to-face environment when things open up, maybe in a semester or so? So, which means that programs that are currently not available online may become available online on a short-term basis. So those are some emerging, shall we say, thoughts that we're saying, things that we would not even have considered 2 months ago. But now, given that there is a significant competition, and I can tell you, if you're an international student, this is probably a good time to be considering programs in the US, because I can tell you top universities are going to be shall we say, competing with each other to get you, because they are expecting this enrollment to impact all over the place.
Great. It's a wonderful introduction to the broad spectrum of what has happened in this situation. How do you see the international student and faculty mobility emerge in the different formats? For example, you have the online education already coming up in full force. But how about the twinning programs? How about other avenues of partnerships where international student and faculty mobility can be impacted because of this situation?
Well, ultimately, I think the preference for most students and for most faculty to have a fully on-campus face-to-face program, okay? Because I think students think about this thing the same way I mentioned earlier on, that the education is not just what they get in the classroom, whether it is a virtual classroom or an actual physical classroom. That the educational experience is a combination of various factors. The interaction in the classroom, the interactions outside the classroom, the opportunity to interact with local industry, and for an international student, the experience of living in a foreign land and embracing the culture and all the things that go with it. So from that perspective, it has been my experience that students always want to be here face to face. The question becomes, A, are they allowed to do so because of various restrictions that may be there? Are they willing to do so because of, again, family pressures or what have you? And then, given what this has done to the world economy, can they afford to do so? Because the cost now, it becomes a significant factor also. Again, there's been a lot of job losses all over the world and so on. So when we look at it, we have to say, all right, for the short term, what kind of changes that we can make to allow these students to experience this global experience without disruption. And that goes back to what I said earlier about maybe a short-term online kind of influence. But one of the things that has come out from this entire reaction or a response that everybody has had to the pandemic is that we are getting better and better at doing things virtually. Things that faculty and students have historically said, oh, I cannot do that virtually. Now we are finding out that it can be done virtually. To the point that, look at this webinar, for example. We got about 200 people on this, and we are seamlessly doing it without any issues. And we have been conducting so many meetings, so many class sessions, and even courses that faculty have historically said, oh, there is no way I can do this virtually, or being done virtually out of necessity. What this means now is that we have the opportunity to think very creatively about courses. Okay, and one of the growth areas I see happening, and this goes back to a question that, or a comment that Dr. Kennedy made earlier on in our introduction, is about the opportunity for especially countries like India to partner with universities, not just in the US, but across the world, in collaborative programs where virtually every course, could be taught, team taught. Okay, you could have a virtual course with students from India, students from the US, right? And it is taught by a faculty member from India, a faculty member from the US, and we'll have to figure out ways, and I think that course will be much richer because of the different perspectives that are being brought to play. And we also have to figure out how to make this work. I have done one program in Italy, for example, very similar to this. Now there, I grant you, it was face-to-face, meaning that my students and my faculty member would physically travel to Italy, and they would teach in a classroom where there would be students from Italy, students from the US, and the course was team taught by an Italian professor and a US professor. And the way we structured this course is that essentially they were dual enrolled in the course. The US students were enrolled in your US course, the Italian students were enrolled in an Italian course. So at the end of the semester, there was no concern about grade transfer or credit transfer and so on. You each did your course. Now that is one way of doing this. Another way of doing this is to have some sort of a collaborative program where the program itself is designed to have components from both universities. Okay, and because of this virtual environment that we have successfully shown that people can adapt to, there is no reason why, say, a course offered by a university in the US should be restricted only to students from that university. You can also have students from other programs. Now, clearly, there are some logistical issues to be worked out here, primarily the financial arrangements, okay? And then also how do the credits transfer, who awards the actual degree, and so on. I have a very innovative program with a university in India, for example, where the students do 1 year at that university, 1 year in my university, and at the end of those 2 years, they get 2 degrees, one from me and one from them, okay? So there are innovative and creative ways of making these things work. My view is that this new introduction to a virtual way of doing things has opened up further areas for collaboration and hybrid programs. I see hybrid programs as another, and we'll talk more about that maybe later on, but hybrid programs is another very viable alternative to further increasing the mobility of students. You also asked about mobility of faculty. Well,
yes,
in our old-fashioned way of thinking, mobility automatically means physically moving from one place to another. Okay, that's the way we are conditioned to think.
Right.
I'm saying in the new normal, mobility may mean a completely different thing, where I have faculty members offering courses jointly in KCT without ever having to leave Dearborn permanently and moving there, or even for a semester, and they can just come to visit KCT for a week or two to have some face-to-face interaction, but the bulk of it is done virtually in collaboration with a partner at KCT or any other university. I'm using KCT and Dearborn as examples.
Right.
This could apply. Right. This could apply in any context. So, if we broaden what we mean by mobility,
one connected question to this is in terms of the.
I lost you there for a second, Ravi.
Yeah, sorry, my internet connection suddenly became unstable.
Okay.
One related question to that is the online teaching or online learning experience will definitely not match what you would encounter in the face-to-face kind of situation. And as you said, the hybrid programs or twinning programs may be an alternative to consider. How do you improve the online learning experience for students, given that this has become a sort of a reality, and you would be forced to conduct most of your classes for the near term as a virtual class? But how do you improve the engagement experience? Because this is a big challenge for all students and the faculty too.
That's a great question, and I would push back a little bit on your premise that online cannot be as good. Okay, now I completely agree with you. There is no substitute for face to face. I mean, you and I are sitting 10,000 miles away, looking at each other on a screen and interacting. Okay, agreed. Our interaction would be probably a little more intense if we were physically in the same room, because you can read the body language, you can read other things that may be a little difficult to do on video. Okay, so I will yield that point to you. So yes, there is a tremendous value for students to be in the same physical space, interacting with each other, and the online takes that away. However, there is a lot of evidence to show, and there is a lot of research on this, and I have several of my own faculty experts who have demonstrated this, that an online course can be as impactful as a face-to-face course. Okay, the key is something that I'm sure you're also very familiar with, something called instructional design. All right.
Yes.
Now, back in the days when we talked about putting a course online, the expectation was that you would put all your PowerPoint slides online, you would put all your notes online, and somehow your in-class course became an online class. That is not an online class. An online class has to be redesigned, okay? So one of the things we are working on right now is systematically looking at every one of our courses, because we are operating under the assumption that what happened this semester may not be a one-time issue. Something like this could happen in the future also, and we want to be much prepared. So one of the things that we are investing in and we are focusing on, looking at every one of our courses and subjecting that course to a thorough instructional redesign. How do you convert this course to an online environment? So, and that is a burgeoning field, by the way. I mean, that is a huge area of interest for opportunity for new students who may be looking for a new career path, but also for people who, you know, can kind of guide others in how to, and I've got some faculty experts, for instance, we call them digital ambassadors. We have given them, you know, some opportunities to help others. And these people are top experts who show how to use, you know, usually the platform is something we call the learning management system. Here it's, we use a system called Canvas, and you may have heard of other ones like Blackboard and so on. So in Canvas, for example, there are so many tools available, okay, to make this work. Now, and there is another factor you need to worry about. When you talk about an online or a remote presence, there is a way to do this synchronously. There is a way to do this asynchronously. This particular webinar we are doing synchronously in real time, right?
Yes.
The challenge with that, of course, is that A, everybody has to be available at the exact same time. And B, we would periodically face what you just faced. You know, your internet suddenly goes crazy and, you know, for a moment there, you're lost. And especially, for example, if my internet goes down now, we are in a little bit of a pickle, okay? So we always also look for how to design it to be taught in a synchronous manner, how to design it to be taught in an asynchronous manner, okay? And so that if it is designed right, I can tell you we conduct survey. We have an MBA program, for example, that can be done completely online if you want. We also have a face-to-face MBA program. And one of the measures we always check on that when we do the end of program surveys is what do the on-campus MBA program students say as opposed to the online MBA programs. And by the way, there will be some students who will do a little bit of both. They can do hybrid, all right? And what we always want to know is that the students who did it online got the same kind of impact, right? Now it's going to be a different impact. I'm not saying it's going to be identical because you're going to, you know, because one of the things you can do in an online program, and in Zoom, for example, you can set up breakout rooms, right? So you can not only have the entire class meet, but you can also have groups of students meet. And there have been studies which show that some students actually appreciate the virtual environment because they can meet not just during designated times, but they can meet many, many more times based on each other's availability, even on weekends and so on. So there are things that a face-to-face environment restricts you to do that a virtual environment does not. So as long as you design things properly, you can have exactly the same impact. That said, I'll tell you, I'm personally not a big fan of a completely virtual environment, right? I am still, I guess, old-fashioned that way. I like the face-to-face. I like to see somebody in the eye, and I like to be able to talk to them. So one of the things I see evolving as we go forward is probably a greater growth in hybrid programs, which have some meetings, but not the full meeting, all right? So that there is you get kind of a little bit, hopefully, of the best of both worlds.
Great. It's a wonderful answer on how to improve engagement within the online platforms. Just probing you a little more on that point that you just talked about, the hybrid programs and the twinning programs. How do you see those evolving in this current system where there is new innovations that need to be coming in all kinds of partnerships between Indian universities and the Western universities. And this is one of the few questions that is I see repeated in many of the participants. They would like to know, how do we improve the partnerships between universities worldwide. So, do you have any perspective on how this can be done, and what is your perspective, maybe from your university standpoint? How are you managing this?
Oh, that's a great question, and I think this is a question that even Dr. Vijala Kennedy can respond to, because we have actually been working with with KCT on some innovative ways of doing this. Okay, when I visited KCT in January, this was one of the conversations we were having. If we think about historical partnerships, especially between universities in the US and universities in India, they focused primarily on giving an opportunity for students in India to come to the US to, either through some scholarship programs or like this dual degree program I just talked about. I have with one university in India. I've got similar programs with universities in China and Taiwan and Jordan and places like that. Those have been the historical thing, but they always have the primary target has been focused on how do we get these students from India to the US, because that has been the biggest interest on the part of the students also. Okay. Now we are looking at a different way of doing this. And specifically, is there a role that the host university or the parent university, in this case, the Indian university or the Chinese university, what have you, can they play a role in this, the educational component itself? So one of the conversations that we had with KCT, for instance, was a program where some of the courses would be done at KCT, taught by KCT faculty, all right? Some of the courses would be taught but done at KCT, but taught by, for example, University of Michigan Dearborn faculty. And some of the courses could be physically done in the US on my campus and taught by University of Michigan Dearborn faculty. And with this other university in India, we've also had a situation, we've invited their faculty to come and spend a semester with us to teach in this program. That is, along with the students, you send a faculty member also. So
Great.
now you are talking about a true collaboration, right? Where courses are being offered by both universities. Courses are being taught by faculty from both universities. So it is not this usual one-way street that we have historically seen. Mm-hmm. And here again, I see the explosion of remote teaching. We're kind of more and more moving away from this term online teaching to remote teaching. I don't know whether, I guess it sounds better. But if you look at remote teaching, that's kind of allows even more opportunities to do this, because now we don't have to worry about the students physically going from one place to another. Okay, so that is where the hybrid concept comes in. So I can offer online programs there, you can offer online programs here, and so on. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want to make it sound like this is going to be easy. Okay, this is going to require a lot of coordination, and the area where the coordination really starts breaking down typically in these negotiations is the financial aspect. Because the fee structures are so dramatically different.
Vastly different.
And, in between the US particularly and India and any other, in Europe, for example, Europe has a completely different model. So, but what we have tried to do here is, I think it's fair to say that there is a new way of thinking about all this. That I think things that may have so far been, shall we say, inconceivable, or universities were like, no, I don't want to do that. Now you're going to find universities in the West, I think, a lot more interested in finding innovative ways to collaborate.
Got it. I have, I see quite a lot of faculty from many universities from India joining in this session. One question that could be a prominent sort of back burner for all of them is about global research. Moving in from the teaching aspect, how do you see this global research becoming? Is there a possibility for it to become stronger through virtual collaboration, or do you see more silos getting created in terms of global research, where each country does on its own? What are your views on that?
Well, there are going to be some country-specific problems that will obviously be solved within silos, right? But if you look at research as a broad perspective, um, I would think there's going to be a lot more opportunities for expanded research across countries. I can tell you that my own faculty, especially the newer ones that I'm hiring, they are as likely to have a collaborator in a foreign location as they are within a US location. Okay. And so, because distance doesn't matter anymore. And if anything, our recent experience over the past 2 months has reinforced that issue even more. Okay. That time zones can always be worked out. And in fact, that's one of the things we preach to our students here, that because students from India and many other places tend to be much more, shall we say, world aware than students from the US. Students from the US typically tend to be very US centric. In some cases, they are even regional centric. They know everything about their particular region of the US and don't know anything even about what's going on in the rest of the US. So one of the things we impress upon our students is that your competition is not sitting in this room. Your competition is sitting in India and China and Brazil and Australia and so on. So you need to have that global perspective. I'm happy to say on the research side, we are starting to see our faculty now have the same perspective. So I see tremendous opportunities for research collaboration across universities. It's only a question of what is going to decide that is two things. One, the faculty expertise and the faculty interest, all right? So if there is a faculty member, and I'll pick KCT as an example, if there is a faculty member in KCT who is interested in a particular topic, and if there is a similar faculty member here, and there are easy ways to accomplish that. Most universities are now setting up databases of faculty expertise, which kind of says, these are the, so you can go to that particular university, type in a keyword and see who are the faculty in that university who are interested in that particular topic. And then it's simply a question of, this is not going to happen because two institutions decided and they will force it on their faculty. This is going to happen because individual faculty connect with each other and make it work, okay? And there are so many topics I see emerging, especially, I can tell you there are two topics right now that, well, in addition to research on the COVID-19 itself, which is, there seems to be a tremendous amount of interest in that. But two topics, particularly with regards to higher education, that there is a lot of interest in finding out what everybody in the world is doing because nobody has a solution. One is how to improve this remote teaching, the topic you brought up earlier. And two, and I'm sure you're all dealing with the same problem, how do you prevent cheating in an online environment? Because that has become a major source of headache for almost everybody because I don't know how, shall we say, widespread it is among the courses that you have been teaching and what your experience has been. But there are websites available where you can post any question and get somebody to answer it for you for a small fee. So if you give an exam and you give the student 24 hours to answer that exam, or even 6 hours to answer that question, there are websites which promise a response in 2 hours. Okay. And so we are right now, just last night, in fact, I was looking at this spate of complaints that we have received from faculty who said my exam showed up on this particular website and there was an answer provided and 6 students gave me the same answer. Okay.
Wow.
So how do you prevent that?
Yeah.
So, with each new, shall we say, innovation we come up with, we end up creating a whole set of problems too. And,
Definitely.
and I look at it as opportunities for additional research. And so if somebody has, for example, solutions to how to address these kind of problems, Those are hot commodities. And I can tell you there are faculty all over the world in every university who would love to collaborate with anybody who has a bright idea about how to address this problem. So I can see research opportunities growing. And I would strongly encourage, if KCT and other universities in India haven't already done so, to set up your own databases. And that's a very easy thing to do, where each faculty member lists their databases, and then this way you are no longer restricted to talking to your own colleagues about ideas. You can look literally across the world in terms of mutual interest. And given that, again, research can be done from anywhere. Now, if it is a natural science kind of research where you need a physical lab, that may pose some limitations. But the type of research that we do in a business school, for example, or in computer science and so on, that's easy. That collaborating on that 10,000 miles away is very, very easy to do.
Great. Wonderful answer to this question of research collaboration. Now, moving on to a topic that is very important for almost everyone is about funding. With growing fund crunch from the university side in terms of endowments, as well as from state funding, as well as students reluctant to spend for international education. How do you manage funding for international education? And related to that, how can universities show a value for money for their students during this time of virtual classes and remote learning, while physical presence does beat everything? How do you provide this value for money perspective?
Oh, can I have an easier question, please? Now, this is a I mean, you are raising some points which, frankly, right now, I mean, that's what our current days are being consumed by. Okay, let's look at the funding part, right? Now, I don't know what the exact situation is in the Indian universities. Obviously, just like in India, in the US, we have the very rich universities, the not so rich universities, and then universities that are, shall we say, financially, skating on the margins. All right. Now, the one thing this pandemic has done is hit everybody hard. I don't know whether you've been keeping up with the press. Harvard just came out yesterday and said that they're expecting a $1.2 billion hit to their bottom line next year because of this, right? Within the University of Michigan, of which I'm part of, our expectations are anywhere from $500 million to $1 billion, right? I mean, that boggles the mind when you think about how do you deal with this. So
that's huge.
we are talking about, first of all, if you're a public university, like many of us are, what is the state going to do? All right, state revenues have obviously been, Michigan has been shut down for the past 2 months, which means there have been no tax revenues. All right, there's no sales tax, and so the state is projecting. In fact, this morning there was a news which said that Michigan is projecting a $3 billion deficit next year. So how is the state going to deal with the $3 billion deficit? They're going to obviously cut funding to the university. All right, we can't. Normally, we have made up, and you went to the law school, Ravi, so you're very familiar with this. The way universities in the US have made up deficit in states funding is to increase tuition.
Yes.
Well, this is absolutely the wrong time for us to do any kind of tuition increase, because students are already saying, I can't afford it, all right?
Yes.
Especially international students. So that's one issue. Industry support has dried up. Because again, I mean, I live in Detroit, in the suburb of Detroit, where we have the big three, Ford, GM, and Chrysler. All three have their headquarters here, but their factories have not been operating for 2 months.
Yes.
All right. And they have already announced that they're cutting off all support for non-core things, including support for tuition remission and things like that. So which means we can't count on that, right? And then there is the big question of, can the students afford to come to college? Now, what about, I mean, as you saw, the US has lost like 30 million jobs, right? How many of those jobs are going to prevent either themselves or their children from going to college this fall, right? So domestically, we are dealing with this mess. Now let's go to the international perspective. All right. Internationally, I know that India has also had the same challenges. So I suspect there are a lot of families in India which are hurting right now economically. So their dreams of sending their children abroad or, may have to be shelved. So there is no easy answer to this question. I think one possibility is some of these joint programs that I talked about, where programs are taught concurrently by the two institutions and so on, where if each institution is willing to forego some of the revenue they would have otherwise received from these programs, there might have to be creative ways of thinking about it. Okay, I can tell you that that is not the first thing we are focusing on right now. All right. Right now, our focus, at least in my university and in conversations with my fellow deans at so many other universities, I can tell you it's the same thing in other universities in the US too. They're all focusing on the domestic students right now. How do, am I even going to get students this fall? And there is a report out 3 days ago which predicted that undergraduate enrollment in four-year universities in the US could drop by 20% next year.
Yes.
Okay. That's a huge hit. I mean, no university is going to be able to take a 20% hit to their budget and, not have some serious consequences because of it. So they are doing everything possible to shore up their undergraduate domestic population and their graduate domestic population.
Yeah.
Because of some of the points you made yourself earlier on in this conversation, Ravi, because of the visa situation, the xenophobia, because of the the reluctance of people to come and so on. To a large extent, universities have assumed that at least for fall of 20, that is the 2021 academic year, international enrollment is going to be severely impacted. Okay, we can only hope that as early as spring of 21, which is January 21, that things have reached some semblance of normalcy, okay, where students are even willing to come and they are allowed to come. And at that point, we'll have to sort out the financial aspect of it. What kind of scholarships obviously all of you, I'm sure, are well aware that funding that used to be available for graduate students from overseas has been declining in the US for many, many years. I remember when I came here, it's now been 40 years. Okay, when I came here 40 years ago, my entire tuition was paid and I was given a stipend to come here and so on. And frankly, that's the only way we could even afford to come here. There was no way we were going to be able to fund ourselves, Right. So a whole bunch of us came here at that time under those conditions. Those conditions don't exist anymore. If you're doing a PhD program today, chances are you're getting funded. But if you're doing a master's program, the best you can hope for in many cases is a partial funding, right? Now, even with partial funding, given how the tuition structure, and I speak to alums here all the time, and they will bemoan the fact that tuition at my university, for example, has grown considerably over the past 25 years. And they will talk about back when they went to school here and how they used to pay $500 a semester or $400 a semester. And now you guys are charging thousands of dollars. What's going on? Well, the key difference is back then, the state of Michigan was providing 75% of the funding for the University of Michigan.
Right.
Today, the state of Michigan provides 17% of the funding for the state of Michigan, for the University of Michigan. And that is the norm in most places. At Clemson, where I used to be, the state of South Carolina had gone down to 9%. So many of the public universities in the US are public in name only. They are self-funded. So that has made a huge difference. So even if I'm able to give, and with all the collaborative programs I have set up, I give partial scholarships.
Yes.
But I am fully aware that the residual portion that the student has to pay, plus the cost of physically coming here and staying here and all that, is not a trivial sum. It is a significant sum that people have to be prepared for. Now you go to the other part of the question, which is the value add. The value add in graduate education you know, I guess I can still say that in the US, the quality of graduate education is still number one, okay, because of the way it is structured here. So
Right.
the value used to be that by coming to the US and getting a graduate degree from a reputed university in the US, in most cases, you had a career path. I can tell you that so many of the international students and a large contingent from India, and students from India have one big advantage. They have the language advantage. Okay?
Right.
That has been huge. They've all been very successful. What's it going to mean going forward? Okay. I mean, you've seen some of the press recently about requests to suspend the H-1B program and all that for a short while until because they've lost 30 million jobs here. So they want to kind of close ranks and say, let's protect jobs for the Americans. Now, that's a very short-sighted view of thinking because it is true that the talent, a lot of the talent comes from overseas, and the kind of jobs that the international students are competing for are not the jobs that the Americans, the typical
We're willing
American
to,
do. Okay.
yeah.
But that doesn't stop the rhetoric.
Understood.
So
Understood.
there's no easy answer to this. The funding, I think we're going to have to get
Creative.
very creative. I see we have to move to Q&A. So
Yeah, it's quite a lot of questions which are very specific to individual situations about students getting admitted and regarding collaborative programs of their own universities, things like that. A couple of interesting questions came about with the rise in online education, MOOC courses like Coursera and edX and Udacity, and where students and industry see more value and the necessity of degree certificate is now being relaxed by many companies. So how will this impact the university education? That's one question that came recently. There's also questions about the viability of the overall international education, given that the career uncertainties, and you rightly pointed out that the governments are being short-sighted by restricting job offers for local population when many of them are not willing to do that kind of work, which is very difficult and tedious to do. So that's another flavor I saw in many of these questions. But broadly, what do you think is this impact of online MOOC courses on traditional courses offered by the best universities?
well, MOOCs, as you can, as you were well aware, there was a period there a few years ago where MOOCs were on everybody's mind, and there was a surge in availability of MOOCs and enrollment in MOOCs, and that has kind of died down now. Now you have
Mm-hmm.
all these OPMs, the online program managers like Coursera and 2U and Audacity and all that, who are uh, offering platforms and programs and so on, and they will work with universities to make programs available. Uh, Now, the programs that are done in conjunction with the university, for example, the University of Michigan has several courses that you can take through Coursera and all that. Okay. The question then becomes, what is the credential you're going to get out of it? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the value of the credential? Right.
Right.
Now, clearly, universities are getting more creative in kind of offering certificates, which are short term programs and so on. At least so far, the industry reaction to some of these certificates has not been as pronounced. Okay, they're still valuing a degree over a certificate. All right. So because there is great variability in the, shall we say, the quality and the impact of these certificates. Could that change in the new normal? Possible. Possible that there might be more students who are saying, that I don't want to go for a full program. I just want to go for a short certificate, which will be just 3 or 4 courses, for instance. That is
Right.
entirely possible. I don't see that happening, at least on the international realm, in terms of a whole bunch of international students wanting to do these certificates in a US university. I don't, because at least my perception has always been students from overseas still want to be able to come here for a program, spend an extended period of time in the US, and hopefully, translate that into a career opportunity. Okay.
Right.
The
Uh,
point that you made about career opportunities, that's an open-ended question. I don't think even if there are temporary, shall we say, restrictions in regards to visas and so on for international students, that the US can sustain it on a long-term basis. I think there is a clear recognition among industry leaders and among even the political leaders that a lot of the talent that the US has been imported. Okay, and so I
True,
don't see
true.
that changing, but there could be a short-term hit to that. I would not be
Great.
surprised to see that at all.
Great. We have a number of other questions, but unfortunately, we need to close on this session as we are running out of time. Hopefully, the questions that I had asked are a little broad based, so that Dr. Raju Balakrishnan's questions were also very broader and strategic in nature, rather than keeping it very tactical. So my apologies if any of your questions, individual questions, were not being able to be answered. But thank you very much for this wonderful session, Dr. Raju Balakrishnan. And I really enjoyed having this conversation with you. And I hope our participants also felt the same. Now, I want to move it over to Dr. Vijla and her team to.
Let me quickly say, let me express my own appreciation to you and to everybody who participated for taking the time today. A lot of interesting things happening, a lot of open-ended issues, and I hope you found at least some of what I have to say useful. If there are any specific questions, if either Ravi or Dr. Vijala are willing to take you up on it, if you can compile them and send them to me, I'm happy to take a look at them. If there's anything I can do to address any specific issues, I'm happy to do that. But again, keep in mind that in many cases, the environment is changing by the minute. So
Yes,
answers that we provide today may be different from answers we provide in 2 months. So as long as
certainly,
you keep that
certainly.
in mind. Thanks again very, very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I am Leo Gertrude from the Department of Visual Communication. One's destination is never a place, but a new way of seeing things. It's a famous saying by Henry Miller, an American writer. Today's session showed the challenges international education faces now and how it's taking different shapes for coming days. I'm sure Dr. Raju and Mr. Ravi made this very clear with their extraordinary quality conversation. Kumaraguru College of Liberal Arts and Science, like to thank our speaker and moderator, and like to extend our best wishes. Digital agility, a holistic approach to digital literacy in the liberal arts, that's where we, Kumaraguru College of Liberal Arts and Science, is heading towards. We have had around 200 participants for the session. I'd like to extend our special thanks to them. We'd like to thank our media partner, Times of India, our technology partner, Social Beat, our marketing partner, DigiGrade. The audience, a special reminder for tomorrow's session. The topic is India emerging as a stronger economy. The speaker is Mr. Valliyappan Nagappan, investor, independent director, columnist, and author. And the moderator will be Mr. Joe, journalist. The session will start at 11 a.m. Please do check our website for details and registrations. The conversationclass.ac.in. Till then, stay home, stay safe. Good night.